Hello to all you Wampas out there. This is Patreon supporter Typo, and this one's got a bad motivator. Look. You're listening to Ice Cave Radio.
Ice Cave Radio is proudly sponsored by Invasion Comics and Cards. Located in Richmond Hill, Ontario, just minutes north of Toronto, Invasion carries one of the largest inventories of Star Wars Unlimited singles, and yes, we're shipping all across North America. Invasion hosts a wide array of events, from weekly casual play to higher stakes tournaments. Go to invasioncnc.ca and use code ICECAVE5 to score 5% off your Star Wars Unlimited singles and 3% off Star Wars Unlimited sealed product. Welcome, friends, to another edition of Ice Cave Radio. This is episode number 46, brought to you by Invasion Comics and Cards, located just north of Toronto. Go to invasioncnc.ca. Use that code. Use IceCave5. Some of you have already done so.
Nice.
Yeah, and you're reaping all the delicious benefits of it. Doa here, Charmer here. We're going to talk some swoo. Lots to get to, actually. A little surprising, to be fair.
Yeah, I thought today was going to be a quieter episode because, there was the whole talk of like, well, is it spoiler season? Is it not spoiler season for Shadows of the Galaxy? Turns out we're very much into spoiler season, so I'm going to keep this short. We're going to talk. Normally, we talk about the headlines, strategies, community issues surrounding Star Wars Unlimited, but today, I've got a feeling the majority of what we're going to be talking about is spoilers. And I'm okay with that. I love that, in fact. So I'm good.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, because this was a very big week for spoilers. I was just like you, Doa, and I said to Flake before we started recording, I thought we were going to get like 3, maybe 4 or 5 spoilers tops, like show off a mechanic or something, or because they also said something about like aspect previews. So I thought like, okay, we'll get, like one of each card type for an aspect or whatever. No, they just dropped bombs on us. But before we get to that, we have to address the cave poll of the week, which, before we do the transition, let me just say, is about people who could potentially drop bombs in the galaxy.
That's one way to put it. Yes, it is, in fact. The cave poll of the week every Sunday. You can catch us on Discord, on Twitter. We'll also tweet out the poll. Lots of options. This week's poll. This is a Charmer poll. Charmer is the auteur of this one, and the question that we pose to you is such: who do you want to be your pilot in the galaxy? There's a plethora of options here. I'll go through them as they were presented. Number 1 is Han Solo. We have Poe Dameron, hero of the Resistance. We've got Luke Skywalker. He's been targeting those womp rats like a awful child, frankly.
They're not much bigger than 3 meters, so hard to hit, but if you got the practice,
Hera Syndulla, leader of the rebellion, or one of the sparks of the rebellion. We've got Wedge Antilles, true hero of the rebellion. Anakin Skywalker, one of the best pilots in the galaxy, frankly. Kylo Ren. Plo Koon, out of nowhere. Plo Koon.
Not out of nowhere. He's canonically is supposed to be a very good pilot. Like, they mentioned that he's one of the only people that can rival like Anakin in terms of skill.
Okay.
Clearly, he's not very good at hand-to-hand. He's on the list because
he earned it, Flake. How dare you?
Plo Koon at least survived 4 seconds longer than the other 2 goons.
He did survive the longest. That's true. Yeah.
And finally, Bodhi Rook. Bodhi Rook of Rogue One is your other option. I will start with you, Charmer. I have a suspicion, but I want clarification. Who did you select as your pilot?
Okay. I'm not saying that this was a trick question, but I worded it very specifically here because it's not who do you think is the best pilot, it's who do you want to be your pilot. So I chose Hera because when I'm considering somebody who I think is a very skilled pilot, but also could probably give me a more leisurely ride if necessary, I felt like she was the best of both worlds. I think that the best skilled pilot is Wedge. I mean, it's the only man to successfully pilot through 2 Death Star missions, right? Like, just Wedge is the sauce. But I also feel like if I was riding like shotgun with Wedge, he's going to make me sick. I think Hera is going to be my best, driving Mr. Charmer experience. So I went with Hera. Yeah. Well, I almost went with like driving Miss Darick because that's my first name, Darick, right? Yeah. So like it would have been more. But then I was like, I don't know how many people know that my first name is actually Derek. So I stopped
know how many
midway
people.
Through.
I don't know how many people know driving Miss Daisy exists.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking to people our age. My apology.
The other thing beyond that is who knows how to spell your name correctly, because that in itself is...
gods.
Yeah.
There you go. There's a 3 in there. You mean his real name? Oh, I have no idea.
How about you? I'll use your real name, too. How about you, Erik?
Oh, it's me. My name's much easier to spell. It's just the last letter that trips people up, because I have the proper Scandinavian Erik with the K at the end. But I digress. Also, if you're at a coffee shop, I really appreciate it when people ask, how's that spelled when I say my name's Erik. It's a little thing, but it matters that people care if it's a C or a K at the end after going my whole life with everyone writing it with a C at the end, and it's not. So to you out there, baristas of the world that ask for proper spelling for people's names, I appreciate you. Thank you.
That's when you get a cup that says Kerik.
I just want to be very clear. I never give my real name at coffee shops because I know they're going to slaughter it. So I usually pick either a joke or whatever. Like I just... Well, so at Flesh and Blood events, I say Tannen because that's a long-running joke on that end. But maybe for SWU events, I'll start giving like Star Wars names.
Yeah,
maybe I'll be Plo Koon.
You could be Plo Koon.
I'm going to start picking Wedge because that's who I picked in the poll. For the reason that Charmer mentioned is that he made it through 2 Death Star runs. He lived through the Battle of Hoth. This guy is like unkillable basically in the Star Wars original trilogy. But I always did wonder, with all of the soldiers in the rebellion, all the pilots, there's got to be like at least 1 or 2 other people out there that survived 2 Death Stars and maybe Hoth as well. And they're like, why does Wedge get all the glory? I was there too. I always wondered, someone should write a story about that person, right? The overlooked pilot.
There is one, the Y-Wing pilot, who, that scene from Return of the Jedi when they're going through into the second Death Star and they're like, let's split up. Let's see if we can take some of those ships like with you.
Yeah.
There is an A-Wing and a Y-Wing that break off. And I forgot the name of that pilot, but she is a very prominent character in some of the books. It might be Alphabet Squadron or it might be another book, but ultimately there is some story around her. I don't think that she was at the Battle of Yavin, but she was a survivor of the battle. But I will say, does Luke count as having survived two Death Stars?
Yeah, he counts, but he's Luke Skywalker, so he's like, he's the Jedi guy. So, but he didn't pilot in the second one.
Right,
so
I was going to say, I said pilot
the
missions, right?
Yeah.
He was.
He does not count.
He was having a family reunion during that second one.
I will
also. I was going to say also Poe with Starkiller Base. I don't think counts for like that level of battle survival because they blew that up from the inside, right? That wasn't done by the pilots, if I recall correctly. I haven't seen Episode 7 in forever, but so I have to exclude him from any sort of like big mission success.
So barring the whole Charmer trying to be clever with how he worded it, etc. Like I took this as who, in a war-torn galaxy, who do you want piloting your ship? And
I would feel safest with Wedge for sure.
I agree. And I think we've had this discussion in the past. And like the fact is that Wedge is frankly a cheat code for the rebellion. Any battle that he has been in has gone their way. I'm pretty sure his
Hoth.
Well, he's okay. But the success of that mission,
his way.
The mission of the Battle of Hoth was to successfully evacuate. Like that was, and he led the Rogue Squadron out there in their speeders and did well, and then he got the hell out of there. So he survived that. He survived every time that the Empire lands on their doorstep, be it Yavin, be it Hoth, he's there to get the job done. And then on the offensive, he's there. And here's the most badass line out of Wedge's mouth is when Lando's like, hey, take out that thing over there. And then so we can take out this Death Star. He's like, I'm already on my way out. Like, yeah, way ahead of you, Chief. Like, no problem. He blew it. He got the hell out of there. And one of the coolest cards in Star Wars CCG from a artwork perspective is Red Squadron 1. It's from Death Star 2, the set, and the ship it's supposed to be Wedge's ship, but it's a close-up of, like, the canopy in the front of it, and on the side, you have the silhouettes of everything that he's killed, and it's two...
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That's
That's
two
right, yeah.
Death Stars and a whole bunch of TIE fighters, and those TIE fighters aren't singles. I'm pretty sure that I forgot how much each of them represent, be it 5 or a squadron or whatever. But this dude, like, when you're talking about lore and you're talking about striking fear in the galaxy, in the time of Darth Vader being at his worst, he evoked fear. Just the name of him, he was this boogeyman, right? I would not be surprised if within the ranks of the Empire that all the Imperial Pilot Corps were just absolutely terrified of Wedge Antilles. He was
if they even knew who he was. That's the thing. The names of these rebel pilots get out there? I think that's even scarier, where it's like you don't really even know if you're running into one of those pilots if you're just some, like, stormtrooper or something. That's what would scare me, you know?
Well, there are some books, for example, Alphabet Squadron, which I'm reading right now, is a 3-part novel, which is canonical, or however you want to say it. It's canon. And
okay.
The whole mission is that the rebellion is now basically they win, but there's still this rogue faction of like a Star Destroyer and a squadron of TIE fighters that are basically elite, like they're flawless, like they never lose, and they become as revered and feared within this new republic. And it's their mission of Alphabet Squadrons to go and hunt them down and to just basically finish the job and get them out of the way, because they are basically what's holding the Empire together, and they don't know anything. All they know is, like, them by their code names, and they are, whatever squadron, I forgot what squadron that they're called, but they have nicknames. It's based on what their ships look like. Like, one of them has is nicknamed Blink because one of the TIE fighters, like, solar panels is scratched and scuffed or whatever. But, like, yeah, I suspect it's best. I went with Wedge, and I think that Wedge is likely the most feared pilot in the entire galaxy. Prove me wrong, children.
Do you want to know why Wedge is not force sensitive?
Why?
Because it wouldn't be fair if he was.
Oh my God! Imagine
we wouldn't need Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. Obi-Wan Kenobi would be like, use the Force, Wedge. He'd be like, dude, I don't need it. Like, we're fine.
On my way out.
Yeah. I'm already on my way out.
Shut up, Obi-Wan, you're distracting me.
Yeah, dude, shut up. I already turned off the targeting computer. Yeah, like, how do I turn you
Never
off?
needed it.
Yeah.
First Jedi to never become a Force ghost because he just never dies.
It's probably.
That's true. Yeah.
All right, so let's go to the results here. And the results are as such. In first place is what Charmer selected, frankly, Harrison Dula.
Yeah, and I'm shocked by this. I'll be honest. I thought Wedge was going to win this by a landslide.
I completely agree, and I'm surprised that a lot of people maybe interpreted the question the same way that you did, and I agree. Like, if it's the way that you describe, Harris should win. At 28.83% of the vote, Harrison Dula. Second place, Han Solo, 18.02%. Hey, he's in it for the money, so maybe loses some votes for that. Wedge Antilles, the Grim Reaper of the Stars, 16.22%. Anakin Skywalker, 13.51%. And fourth, Poe Dameron, just a shade over 9%. Plo Koon, just a shade over 8%. Luke Skywalker at 5.41%. Bodhi Rook scooping up a solo vote. And
I love that, by the way.
And
go ahead.
Screaming for more is Kylo Ren, who
I don't even
just iced out of this entire poll.
I don't even remember. I vaguely remember Kylo Ren piloting a ship in the sequels, and I think it was where he was going to shoot his mom, and then he didn't. and then that was it. So it's like, okay, there's Kylo, but I love that one person picked Bodhi Rook because he's the only person on this list that isn't on there by virtue of his piloting. He's just on there because he tells everyone he's a pilot over and over.
That was
over
one of the
again.
reasons that I included it. That's also why I picked the photo of him that I did, because he looks so dejected. Like, I'm supposed to be a pilot.
Mm-hmm. He's the pilot. Yeah.
Well, he was the pilot.
So he says.
So he says. The other little part where Kylo Ren is actually flying a ship is when he kind of brings it down into the atmosphere and tries to run over Rey. And Rey does this.
And he just gets it cut in half or whatever. Yeah, that's right.
She does this backflip into Superman pose, or like into like a superhero kind of landing pose, and like slices the wing off of it. And
it does. Can we talk about how Poe Dameron shouldn't really get any votes?
Why?
Because sure, he's good, but his attitude. How many people did Wedge get killed in the original trilogy? 0. How many people did Poe Dameron get killed? Scores of his allies with his hubris. So as far as I'm concerned, Poe deserves no votes. Sure, talented mechanically, but not a team player.
Yeah, so Poe is somebody who reminds me of like a real life race car driver, where if it's his machine and he's familiar with it, probably incredible. But what always stands out to me when I think about Poe as his pilot, like skills go, is when he's in that TIE fighter and he's like, oh, this thing really moves. Like he's entirely shocked by how this different spaceship functions entirely.
Whoa!
Like, like not the expert in his field. I feel like Wedge wouldn't even make a sound, right? He's just going to get in and just know what to do, right?
I mean, anyone who's played Mario Kart know that different karts have different levels of acceleration, top speed, all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think Poe may have been surprised by the acceleration of the TIE fighter. That's kind of point of them, right? Low armor, high maneuverability and speed, but still, yeah. I mean, come on, play Koopa in Mario Kart and then play Bowser. They handle differently.
Perfect.
They're different people there.
Perfect analogy. I think that's spot on, actually. But there you have it. That is the entire enchilada when it comes to it. Let's move on to headlines, and they are scarce, but they're not really, because frankly, the biggest headline right now is the fact that today, being the 1st of May, we had an FFG stream pop up that was kind of announced by Tyler Parrott, and we got to witness some cool previews for Shadows of the Galaxy, which is going to be releasing in July. But my goodness gracious, it came with a lot of extra features, as it were, which we will get to. Our first iteration of what this episode was going to be was we're probably going to go and talk about what the leaders could potentially be based on the clues. But then we got dumped with not like a couple spoilers. We got one hell of an
overwhelming barrage of spoilers.
Yes, a bounty of spoilers, some might say.
Right. There you go.
So
that's better. Yeah.
Let's just plow into them, because we've got a ton to get to, and I think that's what the episode's going to be.
Get through it. Do it.
All right, so I'm going to kick us off here. The first one that we have, and again, thank you so much to SwooDB for having these up and ready to rock and roll, which was great. So congratulations to you, and please get some rest, Parker. So
how do they do it? It's amazing.
It is amazing.
What a guy.
2-cost vigilance aspect, follower of the way. It is a unit, a ground unit, a 1/3 Mandalorian. It says while this unit is upgraded, it gets +1/+1. What I like about this is that it's a Mandalorian. It's a low to the ground kind of sort of starter kit for a Voltron style deck, which I like. This also reminds me of a lot of those Hearthstone cards from like the initial set that were every set had a 1-drop 1/3 that did something that kind of was similar to what they wanted to do. There was like the mana worm and all this other stuff. This is what it feels like to me. It's like, hey, here's your turn 0 drop. On next turn, you could jam some upgrades on it, and it'll be a little bit of a force if it survives. I like Follower of the Way. I think it's good, but I think that this is a card that you probably want to play. Like, you definitely want to go first, so you can drop this, claim initiative, and then upgrade it immediately.
Yeah, you can do some fun tricks with it, like throw snapshot reflexes on it. It's going to get +2/+2 because it's going to get the plus from the upgrade. It's going to get the plus from the card text. And so suddenly you're, out of nowhere attacking with a 3/4 that was just a moment ago a 1/3. So, that's just like the tip of the iceberg. I think you can do a lot of fun things with this card. You always have to be aware of what your opponent could potentially do. Can they remove the upgrades? Can they bounce it, et cetera, et cetera? But I think there's a lot of fun things you can do with this card. So, really, really cool common. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff coming out of that one.
Yeah, the biggest issue for this is just that it is vulnerable when it's not upgraded, right? The stat line is a bit below average there, being a 1/3 if, they play a 3/2, for example, and you don't have that initiative like Flake is mentioning, then somebody can get a value trade into it. But what I really like about it is that it is easier to get this buff than it might look, because again, you have to remember experience tokens, shields, all of those are upgrades, right? So you throw a shield on this and you're in vigilance, right? It's a just solo aspect vigilance card. You throw a shield on it and now it's a 2/4 shielded. So I think that in that regard, it's really important to remember, because where this is likely going to shine, if it shines anywhere at all, will be in limited. I know that it's got the Mandalorian tag, and we're going to reference that probably a lot throughout us talking about the spoilers today, but I don't think that this one will be one that will make the cut for constructed. But being able to pull it off very easily in limited is really important, and I think that's the case. One last quick caveat: it's also a detriment if your opponent is trying to play negative upgrades on it. So if your opponent is trying to put like that wanted card on it to give it a bounty, then you're going to buff it. And so it's kind of got like a weird protection from the wanted card that's already been revealed.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Put a Jedi lightsaber on it and then swing on turn 2 with a 5/7. Yeah.
Slam a traitorous on it and have even more fun.
That is fun.
Okay. Who wants the next big boy?
I want the next one.
Go ahead.
Because I feel bad. I sometimes mistake IG-88 for this one, and now I will never get it wrong again, because we have IG-11 revealed. This is a 5-cost ground unit, only aggression. So not aggression villainy, just only aggression. For that 5 cost, you get a 6/5 body, which is a lot. Has droid and bounty hunter tags. And then it also has some pretty relevant text. If this unit would be captured, defeat him and deal 3 damage to each enemy ground unit instead. So you cannot take him alive, right? He self-destructs. And then on attack, you may deal 3 damage to a damaged ground unit. So he will just finish off anything in all likelihood. I mean, obviously late game, there are some things with a lot of health, but for the most part, if he's swinging, he's going to finish off something that's already wounded. I really like the flavor of this. Not having heroism or villainy is, I think, really in line with the way the character was portrayed on The Mandalorian. I like that he's, again, kind of a whirlwind of finishing things off, and I like that you can't take him alive. I think flavor-wise, this is a big win.
Yeah, it's a really cool card. I'm curious to see if people are going to find ways to work this into constructed, because it's 5 for a 6/5. So even just looking at the numbers purely, it's not too bad. It suffers from the same thing that any card suffers from when you're thinking about putting it into constructed deck is, will it do something right away? But at 5, you can still ECL it potentially, so you can do some fun tricks there. So I think it might have some use there. But I love that the subtitle for it is just "I cannot be captured." That's it's kind of, I feel like the developers are speaking to us right there,
One of the first times that I ever got scared of a droid like this was playing the N64 Shadows of the Empire, where the IG-88 mission was so difficult. But the other time that I was absolutely terrified of this droid was in The Mandalorian, where he started to just go absolutely haywire and murdered everyone. And when The Mandalorian was like, "All right, I think we're cornered here," he's like, "Okay, initiating self-destruct." He's like, "No, hold on, we got options. Like, relax." I think that this card, as just a aggression, there's no villainy, there's no heroism associated to it in any way. I think it's awesome, and I think it fits what the unit is meant to be. But this feels like an ECL target like crazy. Like this, it may not have the overwhelm that you may want, but a 6/5 that can go through, and let's say there's something that's got a damage counter on it, you might just clean its clock straight away without having to worry about it. It says on attack, you may deal damage to a damaged ground unit. Just swing it to something that has 3 health left, and then get a clean kill and have an IG-88 on the board. Maybe that's the best option. I like the card, and I like the artwork.
Obviously, we're going to have more leaders coming in the next set, but just thinking about existing leaders, this is the sort of thing where if you're playing Vader with green for ECL, right, for the energy conversion lab, this is great because your Vader leader is going to be able to ping things pretty easily, or, you know, hopefully pretty easily throughout the game. So you'll have something that's wounded, and then, as Flake was saying, you could play this, chew up likely a big unit and survive, right? That 6/5 is big stat wise, and hopefully finish off whatever else was wounded. This has the potential to be like a 3-for-1 play in a deck like that.
All right, Doa, you can hit the next one of which I think is the coolest art.
Yeah, well, it's a cool scene in the first episode of Mandalorian for sure, where they're like, Mandalorian's like, nope, don't shoot the Baby Yoda, please. He's so marketable. But it's a fun moment. Good art. But the card itself is Spare the Target. It's a tactic. Cost 3, Heroism, Cunning. Return an enemy non-leader unit to its owner's hand. Collect that unit's bounties. So this is an interesting card for a lot of reasons. One, obviously, people are going to make the comparison right away with Waylay. This is Heroism locked to a certain extent. Not truly locked because of the rules of the game, but essentially locked to Heroism. And so it's like, if you're going to run Heroism in a world where bounties exist, you might as well just run this instead, because it does the same thing for the same costs, and you have a little extra bonus on the side. I like the idea that you can use it to not only put a bounty on something and then remove it without having to like run your units into it and do some sort of trade on board that way. And it also just makes it really unappealing for your opponent to play some of those value units that have bounties printed on them too, because then they're going to get returned. You're going to get the bounty anyway, and then your opponent isn't probably going to want to play that card again, because then they just have to worry about you collecting that bounty twice. So it kind of puts your opponent in an awkward spot with those with those cards with the bounty printed on them that haven't been upgraded. So it is interesting. I still have the same thoughts about this that I do with Waylay itself, which is where, as the game goes on, there's going to be more and more of a priority in constructed play to play cards that do things right away. And so obviously you're not really incentivized to Waylay those because you don't want them to do that thing twice. So I think as time goes on, cards that have this return mechanic are going to need these little extra things to continue to be playable, because just returning them isn't going to be good enough as the card pool deepens. So I like to see this here. To me, that's an encouraging sign that like the future is being well thought out, and there are mechanics, you know, that we're going to have to include in these types of cards to keep them relevant, and that kind of keeps a good flow and a good flavor for Cunning going. So yeah, so I like this card for a lot of reasons, and there's a few of them.
I think it's a good card. I mean, you hit most of everything. Frankly, it's just Waylay, a better Waylay if you're playing Heroism.
It's not, though. All right, so I want to touch on one thing that I think is being glossed over, and it might not seem like a huge deal, but as somebody who literally just did this to my son Stark yesterday when we were playtesting some games here at home, the big difference between this and Waylay is that this says return an enemy non-leader, and Waylay is any unit. So you can use Waylay to save some of your own units, or if they have those good comes into play effects like Doa's talking about, then you can Waylay your own unit and then get that value. So like yesterday I was playing my Cunning Sabine list, and Stark played a Chewbacca with Sentinel, and I bounced my own Spec Force soldier with Waylay and replayed it to go through for lethal. Obviously, Spare the Target will not let you do that. Now, not a huge deal, especially in Heroism, but this is a tactic, as Doa said, not a trick. So that's going to be more relevant for decks that care about tricks if you're playing Jabba, or who knows if we'll get more support for that in this upcoming set. But to me, that's the big thing. Now, I do like that this lets you collect bounties, and I love that it's Heroism locked for that, because it's very great thematically. Like, you're the good guys. You're not out there trying to kill people if you don't have to. And going a step further, I like that it's within the color pie of Cunning while still letting you collect bounties. So flavor-wise, I think this is a big win. But I did just want to highlight that one thing, that it's not 100% exactly just like better Waylay. Waylay does still have some uses and might be worth consideration depending on the kind of deck you're playing.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember thinking about that use case for Waylay, but kind of writing it off because it's so expensive. Because I have to pay 3, I have to spend a card, and then I have to pay to play a card again. So it always felt like such a fringe case. So I totally forgot that. But I also didn't say it was a better Waylay. So
Yeah.
for the record, that wasn't me.
That was me.
I'm not saying, and you are right, it is expensive, but when your opponent, when you've hit where it's 7 resources and they're playing their chewy leader, paying 4 to just negate the Sentinel on that feels pretty good.
Hey, if bounties become prevalent, then you're running this because, I mean, if you want to run the Waylays too, that by all means, but I have a feeling that if bounties become prevalent, like the the players that have played Waylay will play this. Like, let's be real. How often does that come? I understand the difference between the two, and I understand that in very niche scenarios, it becomes a viable play to Waylay and bounce your own unit. I just think that those are very few and far between scenarios, But
I will throw this out there, right? I think that if you are playing the kind of deck where you're also giving your opponent bounties, then obviously Spare the Target is better. So if you're playing, the new Mandalorian deck that we're getting, Spare the Target ends up being better. But if you are playing something like the current version of Sabine, or at least a current version of Sabine, right? Where you're either going to have cheap things like Spec Force Soldier you might want to reuse, or again, sometimes you might just want to bounce a cheap red unit and then re-trigger Fighters for Freedom. Even though this looks like it's nothing but upside, unless the meta is just flooded with stuff with bounty, like I think there will 100% be playable cards that just have bounty on them natively. We've already seen some. We're going to see some more as we talk through this later. But I think that it will come down to the kind of deck you're piloting on whether you choose Spare versus Waylay.
All right,
I think it's a very good sideboard card, like Waylay is. But we should move on.
Yeah,
we have many more cards to cover.
Lots to do. Next one is actually a leader. We got another leader. This one is Bo-Katan Kryze. She is a aggression heroism leader, with the action being you can exhaust her to basically, if you attacked with a Mandalorian unit this phase, deal 1 damage to a unit, not a base. And upon epic action, at 6 or more resources, you can bring her into the fight. She is a 4/7. Says on attack, you may deal 1 damage to a unit. If you attacked with another Mandalorian unit this phase, you may deal 1 damage to a unit, to the same or a different unit. So she can go ahead and kind of rain down a little bit of hellfire on a busy board. But I will be very honest. This hero is getting a lot more love than I thought she would. Maybe it's just because she's the new one. Maybe I'm missing something here. But from all the pieces I've seen, this leader does not wheel itself into relevance based off of everything else that's out there currently.
I would agree. I think this will be a decent unit in limited, and I think that's maybe more the idea with it. Because I could see building a fun Mandalorian limited deck in sealed or in draft, and then you play Bo-Katan and you can do some board control with it. In constructed, I look at this card and I put it against what I've started to call the Jyn Erso test, which is where if it's a 6-drop, if it's a 6-drop that's a 4/7, what's the ability, right? Because you've got Boba Fett, or maybe I should call it the Boba test, because Boba Fett's a 4/7 that drops on 5. Yep. Jyn is a 4/7 that drops on 6 and has not that inspiring of an ability, we shall say. Bo-Katan is another 6-drop 4/7, so her ability must be pretty good, right? It's an interesting sort of board control type ability, and it's in red. If there's more stuff that throws points of damage around, you could see fun combos being put together where, because like you think about the Sabine unit, right? The 2/3, also a Mandalorian, of course, that you attack with, and you can do a damage to the defender. You can do some maybe funky tricks with her and then use Bo-Katan to finish off something that has like 4 health or something like that and try to trade a little bit more equally. But yeah, I would say just on the virtue of by the time you flip her, it's going to be, a 4/7 coming out on resource turn 6. that doesn't tend to be a huge threat unless you have upgrades ready to play on the leader, and then in that case, then that can be a big threat. But if you're going to build this in a constructed sense, I think you're going to have to go pretty heavy into the upgrade side. And as proof of that, you should look at how Jin Urso decks are built right now and how like Chirrut Imwe decks are built right now, right? Where when those units come out, you kind of save your resources, you upgrade them, and then you do kind of the Voltron thing that Flake mentioned, where it's like you make them very, very difficult to deal with because they're leaders and they're not vulnerable to a lot of the other removal that exists. So, yeah, I think not like a super exciting leader to be honest, but I think you could probably do some fun stuff with her in limited. I'd pick her in limited.
I think that she, as is right now, is good, not great. I think that if we get enough Mandalorian support, she actually could become much better. And it doesn't have to be direct Mandalorian support either. So I will say I like her a lot more now that I've seen IG-11, right? IG-11 is exactly the kind of card that I think works well with her because her ability is very similar to Vader, right? You're pinging things and then hopefully IG-11 can help you finish them off. So I feel a little bit better. Like the idea of playing her as a control leader is somewhat inspiring. And I also, so that's the other part that I wanted to just quickly highlight and then we can move on. But I think that people are high on her because the reality is if you wanted to play heroism control red, your leader choices have not been great thus far. You've got Sabine, who's very much aggro, and it's not that Cassian is bad, but he just also still feels like an aggressive leader. Now, you can certainly play him as control and use him to draw cards and fill your hand, but that also requires you to be dealing damage to your opponent instead of fighting for control of the board. So it's always been that kind of like awkward spot for heroism red control lists. And she's just a leader that gives you a built-in board control ability. So she looks outstanding because the bar has been really low in set one.
That's a good point. Yeah. Is the best heroism aggression control leader we've seen before. Yeah. So far.
Next up, who wants to do the next big boy?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'll do it just because I love the design of the ship.
Yeah, sure.
It's just really cool looking. I knew you would too because you.
I'm a ship guy,
Yeah. Yep. I'm a ship guy as well. So without further ado, First Light. This is a 7-cost space unit. And it is Vigilance and Villainy, has a 4/7 body, has the Underworld, Vehicle, and Transport tags, has the Grit keyword, which is really good on a 4/7 body. But it also very conveniently says, each other friendly non-leader unit gains Grit. Also has Smuggle on it for the same cost, 7, and then Vigilance and Villainy as your aspects. But when you smuggle it in, you can deal 4 damage to a friendly unit. So you can surprise folks with giving something else grit and essentially buffing its attack by 4 when you smuggle this into play. I think the art is fantastic. I think that the design of this is really, really cool because it really does feel like that kind of surprise grit play. The only complaint I have about this, and it's a very small one, is it's just going to sound weird. I really wish this was a 3/7 and not a 4/7 because I would love to be able to play this in an Inquisitor list and have him trigger it. Outside of that, I think that the card is very good, especially with the smuggle ability. And I'll be honest, there's a part of me that wonders if maybe in testing this used to be a 3/7 and they bumped it to a 4 as a way to nerf it. Because otherwise this is doing everything you want for that deck.
I definitely see that. Yeah.
It's worth noting. I don't really have too many notes on this. It is worth noting, however, that it was explained that smuggle mechanics, the deal 4, cannot target itself. That the smuggle text occurs before the card actually enters the battlefield, as it were. So you can't just put this in as like an 8/3, which could be cool. Don't get me wrong; it would be pretty awesome. But having other big booty presence on the board and be able to just drop a fat 4 on it to give it 4 extra damage, that might get you through. Imagine this on an attack pod. Holy crap. Like, just give the attack pod, go gadget craziness right out of the gate. And it already has grit, right? It already has that nastiness. It's just a matter of being able to reliably give it a +4, and suddenly that attack pod is a formidable force.
I would hit Jabba the Hutt with it.
Yep.
It'd be huge.
Jabba was one of my thoughts because it's like any non-friendly, so it can be space units. Obviously, AT-ATs, Avenger is already in those colors, so some of those are good. The other one that kind of jumped out at me is if you play a later game Childson that's pretty big, turning him into an offensive powerhouse could be kind of funny. Or anything that you maybe have buffed, like with Gideon.
Oh God,
it's gonna be a little bit hard to use since 4 damage is quite significant, and your opponent does get to take an action before you attack with anything you fit. So it's gonna, like any card in this game, I feel like requires some finesse to really kind of make it work. And then the question is, is it worth the cost of planning? How hard is this to set up, right? But I think the smuggle mechanic goes a very long way in making it pretty playable. So it's cool. I love the smuggle mechanic, by the way. It's just great.
It's super rad. I just imagine the sadness that would occur if you just like have an Avenger on the board and you smuggle this out to have an Avenger just rip faces in half. God. All right. I don't want to think about it.
Or if you're looking for ways to like negate the potential drawback of that 4 damage, like Doa was talking about, a card that even in Constructed has snuck its way into a few lists is something like Cargo Juggernaut. So that's a 4/6 that's also got shielded. So you might just burn your shield, but just to give it grit and then have it trade into something. Or again, maybe you've already used the shield and now you're setting up for like a finisher. But again, it's that 4/6. I do think that there's already like a good number of things that I would want to target with this, and we're only going to get more in the next set, I assume. So I'm really excited about this card.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Doa, you can get the next guy.
Okay, it's speaking of things I'd love to hit with that ship, but it's it's heroism, so we can't. It's the Gentle Giant. It costs 6. Heroism vigilance. I'm on no sleep for the last week and a half. Thanks, baby. But anyway, it's a 2/8 Wookiee. That's right, and it's got grit. I've got a feeling gritty Wookiees are going to be a theme in Star Wars Unlimited. Can't wait until they bring in Chewie's family from the holiday special. Come on, Fantasy Flight. Where's my Lumpy? Where's my Itchy? Where's my Mala card? Make it happen. I need a Wookiee family deck. But anyway, this one on attack, this is interesting. You may heal damage from another unit equal to the damage on this unit. So yeah, it's going to be interesting because you're going to be able to do things like give it Sentinel, and then when somebody attacks it, does some damage to it, you attack, and then you're healing one of your other units that might be damaged while this thing is doing its thing because it's got grit. So there's some really interesting use cases for it. I think it's going to be really annoying to deal with in limited, but yeah, it doesn't like strike me as like a super thrilling card, but it's a neat card. It's a neat card.
Chirrut is gonna love this card. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think that is the potential Constructed home. If it doesn't fit there, it doesn't fit anywhere. I'll just say that. It's going to be a monster in limited, and I dread situations where my opponent gets like 2 of these up and running, where they're just like trading into things and then healing each other back and forth.
High-fiving each other, yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So
yeah, I like it.
It's a common, so you're gonna run into it. Have an answer.
Yeah, this is going to be a nasty, nasty card. All right, let's go to the next one. It's Ketsu Onyo or Onyo.
Onyo?
Onyo? Ketsu.
I don't know.
It's Ketsu. It's a 2-drop ground unit. It's got aggression. It's got heroism. It's a 3/2 Mandalorian Underworld Bounty Hunter. Are you keeping track here? It's got Saboteur built in, and it says when this unit deals combat damage to a base, you may defeat an upgrade that costs 2 or less. So this is fun. Now, the 2 or less upgrades, there's some significant ones. I know that I was slapping you around a little bit with Devotion just today or yesterday as well, Doa, and I think that
was this morning. Yeah,
was it this morning? Yeah. So
Data with Devotion is scary.
It is scary, and this is definitely something that I think will get perhaps some looks. It could be maybe maybe this is the sort of second the 2-drop that you put in there if this Mandalorian Voltron build comes together. So yeah, I mean I will defer to the heroism aggression crew, which is you guys.
I love this card. I like this potentially for Bo-Katan because I do still think that having early Mandalorians that you can play on turn 1 and attack to get the trigger is going to be very, very relevant for her. But what I really love about this is that it's aggressively costed for a nice heroism aggressive unit. It's already got the built-in Saboteur, and the deals combat damage to a base thing is going to be easy to accomplish because of Saboteur. But going even a step further, this has a lot of potential with, again, we've seen cards like Wanted where you might be able to peel off some of those negative things, or another one that has come up at least somewhat recently for me a lot is Entrenched, right? That's another one where you might want to peel it off. Again, one thing that I want to point out, like with the other 2-drop Mandalorian, experience tokens and shields are upgrades. So where you could see this getting a lot of use cases is, you're swinging and hitting a base, but then you're just powering down your opponent's other units, right? Like, yes, this has Saboteur, so you could eat through shields anyway, but maybe it's a bigger unit and you just want the shield gone so that you can trade into it more favorably or whatever. I love this. I'm like dying to throw this into Sabine and see where it takes me.
Childson players hate this one trick.
Good luck, Tarkins. Yeah, all your XP just gets removed by Ketso Anyo every turn. But yeah, it's a neat card. I like it. I could see it going in there as sort of replacement of like Wolf and a lot of sideboards for Sabine lists and things like that. Removing upgrades is generally always going to be a good thing. Saboteur is a nice little bonus on the card. I was particularly curious about the use cases around the traits, the Mandalorian Underworld Bounty Hunter. That's like the 3 best traits in the set, it seems like, based on what we've seen. So this card having all of them means there's a lot of flexibility with how you can use it in regards to other cards that deal with those specific traits too. So that's something to keep an eye on with this card, is how can you exploit those things too. So yeah, another neat card. Definitely one of the most intriguing ones we've seen yet, I think.
Let's go on to what I am early nominating as the most cool looking hyperfoil we might have in the future set.
Maybe, yeah.
All right, that's all you.
Oh, it's who, me?
Whoever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Clan Challengers. All right. It's a 5-cost aggression unit, 3/6 Mandalorian Trooper. Ooh, it's got that Trooper tag. People love the Trooper tag. Raid 3, so it becomes a 6/6 on attack. While this unit is upgraded, it gains Overwhelm. So that's neat. The question is, how can you play this in a way where you can quickly, give it an upgrade and start to overwhelm people with it? Because again, at 5 costs, it is EC-eligible. So the question is, what else can we do to exploit that? I guess I think the Trooper tag is going to be part of that, because I think in set 1, if I'm remembering right, there's stuff that puts XP on troopers and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure there's fun tricks you can do with it. So it's a neat card.
I think it's Tajay does something with troopers or puts experience tokens on up to 4 troopers on the board. He's a command villainy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I suspect the command villainy aggression is where the trooper land is. I don't know how else to explain.
Land.
Yeah, trooper land. But man, that artwork, dude. Oh boy.
The artwork is fantastic. There's only like one other card that I think might rival it so far. Though I do think First Light's going to look outstanding in hyperspace as well. But yeah, artwork's going to be outstanding. The thing that jumped out to me when I looked at this is very much a card that Inquisitor wants as part of its suite. The 3 attack, 6 health is ripe. The raid 3 makes it very aggressive. And then if you throw an upgrade on it that just doesn't increase its attack, you can still hit it with the Inquisitor. Or, to be honest, it might just be one of those things where you play it, you use your Inquisitor to, get the activation, swing, and then you upgrade it to help keep it healthy after the fact, and then just keep swinging. I think there's a lot of flexibility there, but this is a card that I think I want to at least experiment with it with Inquisitor, and what's the other one? Is it Keep Fighting as well, right? Where you can swing again, or ready a unit anyway to try to swing again. Whenever I see 3 or less health, and especially as something that has a fat back end, that's where my mind goes. I think that there's a lot of room to play around with here.
Yeah. Red green Inquisitor. Might be interesting.
Double red Inquisitor.
Oh,
Could
true.
be a thing too.
But then you can't ECL it, kill something, then Inquisitor it, ready it, and hit again, right?
All right, one of you do my new favorite card from the set so far.
I'll tackle this one because I think this card is also outstanding. Clone Deserter. This is a 1-cost. Yes, I said that correctly. 1-cost ground unit. It is heroism and command, but it is a 2/3 fringe clone unit that has restore 1. Also has bounty, draw a card. So you get a 2/3 with restore 1 for 1, and your quote unquote drawback is that your opponent draws a card. I love this for heroism based control decks. I think that Hera, even though it's not a Spectre unit, also wants to immediately include this to help shore up your early game till you can find your cool Spectre combo pieces or interactions or whatever. This is a house for a 1-drop. I'm in love.
It's Zombie Chow, man. Like, this is that Zombie Chow drop again.
No, you're right.
It's the 1-drop 2/3. The downside is not health restoring your opponent, giving them a card. And I'm all for.
But you get to restore health. That's why this is better. Like, this having restore 1 is nuts.
Yeah, I agreed. And it's gonna be in all of the developing heroism control lists, because you need to have something on the board that is going to trade well. You could potentially have the dream of 2 of these out at once. And yeah, if you give your opponent a card, that's fine, because you should just have, I mean, how did our games go, Doa? It got to a point where eventually the tides shift of control versus aggro, and then it just becomes almost like a hopeless thing. Like, you have to get there before your opponent can sort of turn the corner. This is merely there to, like, you could have as many cards as you want. It's not going to bother me, because once the big boys come out to play and kind of lock everything down, then it's fine. This is just a cheap trading, like a value trading character that can also, get some value back if it's not immediately addressed. You could just go face with this and start collecting the dividends of just restore 1. This just negates that Sabine ping on that turn 0. Like, you'll play it and then play one of these, play another one maybe, and then claim initiative, and then go face and just negate that Sabine ping.
Well, I see this as an aggro card through and through. There's like this annoying fruit fly. Anyway, I see this as an aggro card through and through, right? Because you play it. If I played red green Sabine, I would put this in my red green Sabine deck immediately, because it's a overstated unit. Who cares if they draw a card? It's still going to be too early in the game for that to matter a whole lot, because you're usually playing, 1 card a turn for the first, couple turns anyway. And the restore will negate the damage you do to yourself with Sabine. So yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a great aggro card. I think it's a certainly a card you can put into control decks too. But it's just overall, I think, quite a good card.
I'm on the other side. I as a Sabine player, I would shudder if my opponent opened with 2 of these on turn 1, because I either have to go into the ground arena and compete with them, which means I'm not doing damage to my opponent, I'm losing tempo, or there are scenarios where you might say, okay, well, I'm going to start with an A-Wing into a red 3, and I'll just try to, race in space. But that restore 1 is such a big deal because it's slowing things down and putting the clock back on myself. Also, the fact that this is command means that even if you draw it late game, it's not entirely useless, because you could play it with Colonel Yularen, aka Colonel Sanders, and get some cheap early, or not early, but cheap health gains, right? Like, you spend 1 resource, you heal. You spend 1 resource, you heal. Like, that adds up over time as well. This card scares me as an aggro player. I am not happy to see it.
Like, this card, it seems like it has a home in aggro, has a home in control. Like, Leia can just slam this out and do some crazy. It's not a rebel though, but yeah, that's Sabine wants thing. It. Yeah. All right, let's go to the.
You can build around that.
The next one, it seems like aggression's getting a lot of goodies in this little drop here. So let's move into the next one. Is it my turn?
I think so.
Sure.
All right, let's do it. So 6-drop ground unit, aggression, solo aspect. It's a Covetous Rivals. And it is a 5/5 bounty hunter unit. It's got grit. It also says, when played or on attack, you may deal 2 damage to a unit with bounty. So, 5/5 grit for 6. We've seen something similar in like the siege tank or something like that, which is a 5/4 grit, which is kind of like meh. The on attack or on deploy deal 2 damage to a unit with bounty. Like the one thing I think about with this card is that, yeah, it's bounty hunter tag, so you automatically just assume that this is only going to find a decent home within any kind of bounty-oriented deck. I don't see this card really factoring into anything else unless it's a strictly bounty-oriented deck.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
As far as
sideboard
construction
maybe
goes.
Yeah. That's the other thing too, is that like it seems like there's a big priority for every set to be able to be very playable and limited, and this is definitely going to be a good limited card because everyone's going to be playing bounties, everyone's going to have all that stuff. So I would put it in my limited deck, maybe sideboard and constructed depending how the meta shakes up, right?
Doesn't significantly impress me, but then again, I don't have
The
a
next
bounty
card,
on me.
though.
The next card likely will. So
Next card's great.
hit
Next
it.
card's awesome.
You guys can
For a
fight.
Common too.
Fight
I'll
for it.
Yeah, Doa.
Cool.
Sure.
Oh, all right. I'll go. All right. It's a 3-cost command card, a reputable hunter, a bounty hunter. Hunter. 3/4. If an enemy unit has a bounty, this unit costs 1 resource less to play. So, you know what? They revealed a bounty called Wanted. It costs 0. Your opponent starts the game. They play a unit. You play Wanted on them. They say, okay, I guess I'll take initiative then. And then you say, all right, I'm playing a 3/4 for 2 resources now on my very first turn. And they're like, oh no, he's got a 3/4 out. And my measly whatever I dropped on first turn has a Wanted condition as well. So I think it's the 1-2 punch for command cunning here if you want to try to lean into what this set can do. So that's kind of neat.
I think this card is outstanding because, yes, you could play Wanted, but we've already kind of highlighted a few cards that I think will ultimately find a home in Constructed, and we might see more as obviously we get more cards revealed for this set. But if we ever live in a world where Clone Deserter, for example, is a mainstay, or
that too,
Dr. Evazan, that's another cheap card with a bounty drawback that we've all been high on thus far. Cards like that, if they're part of the meta, suddenly Reputable Hunter just becomes an outstanding play for aggro, for control. Just having raw stats, just getting a 3/4 for 2, very, very good. And there's not much else to say. Like I'll play a 2-cost 3/4 all day long. So it's going to be meta dependent, but I believe anyway that I've seen enough to think we're going to have enough bounty native stuff where you don't have to play Wandered or do any other weird tricks. I think that we're just going to have this as a potential sideboard or even just a main deck card after the set drops.
I think that
so many of these.
What Doa mentioned with the Wanted into this is a very good thought. The first thought that crossed my mind was what you said, Charmer, which was this is the ideal response to a turn 0 Dr. Evazan that just hits the board, and it's like, all right, I'll meet you halfway. This guy's got slightly bigger booty than you, so at the very least, it survives a first swing, right? So.
Yeah, and obviously we just talked about Clone Deserter, but the other one, the name is escaping me right now, but I know that we've seen a 2/3 1-drop that was a ship in Cunning Heroism that also had bounty natively that we were all really high on as well.
Turncoat.
Yes. Like I said, the name was escaping me, but like that's another one where I think that very well could find a home in Constructed. And so if we have these early, with a bounty as a drawback cards just kind of running rampant in the new meta, suddenly this card looks outstanding.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get the next one. I'm getting into some of the grit stuff here.
All right, so I will take this one. I actually really love this from a flavor standpoint. This card is Take Captive. It is a 3-cost event in Command. It is a tactic, and it says a friendly unit captures an enemy non-leader unit in the same arena. So It's a common, very useful and limited in my opinion, but I love that it is flavorful in that in order to take the captive, you have to be in the same arena. And we're going to talk about some other cards later. So when you're looking at the differences, much like we were highlighting with the, Waylay and the other bounce earlier, the spare the target, this card is going to be, I think, heavily compared to the next card that we talk about as well. But this one is very flavorful. I dig it. And I don't know if it'll find a home in constructed. We'll have to wait and see, because obviously whatever you're using to take a captive with, it's got to be able to stick around. But it'll see a lot of play in limited for sure.
Are there any cards that I'm wondering now if there's going to be one that lets you there should be something that lets you do something to the captives you take, right?
Oh, well, I mean, if we're talking about Star Wars CCG had Human Shield, and I would...
Well, Human Shield,
I want to
feed
turn
it to the Rancor, feed it to the
I want
Sarlacc.
to turn the bounty myself. Yeah. Like if I capture something, that I want to then be able to cash in somehow.
There's going to be...
That's my request. I want to see something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if like one of the leaders we get has to do something with captives. Like
that would be awesome.
That would be awesome. Like what if like one of them is just the Rancor, and it just eats a captive, and it's like you gain health based on half of the opponent of the, or you gain health based on the cost of you're something like that. I don't know, man. Like I want
a Jabba leader that on attack he destroys captives underneath him. So if you're coming from like Legends of Runeterra, there was a champion that was Tom Kench who could essentially like take captives, and then when he attacked, you would eat them, right? He would swallow them. So with this, it would be very similar. Jabba, obviously, he's a gluttonous guy anyway, but it would be whether it's representing the Sarlacc or the Rancor or whatever. I like the idea of you take the hostage as Jabba and then you destroy him when you attack with Jabba, or maybe he has an action. Maybe you don't attack with him, but you have to activate him or whatever. I will just say that all of these things that deal with capturing they're going to be instantly better if you do it on your leader as opposed to non-leader units, because your leaders are usually more protected as far as keeping things around. But I think that would be very flavorful, right? If we get a Jabba leader that he just eats captives one way or another.
I took a different direction. I want an Ugnaught chief, like because I think there was in Star Wars CCG there was the chief Ugnaught of the guys who were running the tech on Cloud City for carbon freezing. So I want an Ugnaught chief leader that lets me capture things and then he carbon freezes them, and then I get something from that.
His name was Uglost, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it really?
I believe it was Uglost. Yep. But
well, just let me carbon freeze people.
I'm calling it. There's going to be a Human Shield esque type cards, and for those who aren't aware, there's a mechanic in Star Wars CCG by Decipher where you can take captives, and there was an interrupt, which is kind of like an instant that when your opponent when you were targeted by a weapon, you could forfeit your captive instead. It basically takes the bullet for you, which is pretty nasty. Yeah. All right, next one, Relentless Pursuit. We're into the cunning stuff now, friends. It's a 3-cost cunning tactic. It's an event. It says choose a friendly unit. It captures an enemy non-leader unit that costs the same as or less than it. If the friendly unit is a bounty hunter, give a shield to it. So it's more capturing, more bounty hunter synergy, and gives it a little protective hat, as the picture is of Cad Bane, and who's got a cooler hat in Star Wars than Cad Bane? And no, Amidala doesn't count.
I was actually thinking Amidala. It's more of a headdress kind of thing instead of a hat, though, I suppose, Yeah. It's more hair centric than hat.
Look, I agree. This card, I think, is going to be quintessential to a bounty hunter captors type thing. It's a common. It's a 3-drop. I mean, the problem is getting a bounty hunter on the board with cost significant enough. But hold on a second. There are leaders that are going to have bounty hunter tags, and they're probably going to have a fatter deploy cost as well. So if you're floating out there and like, yeah, Boba Fett is 5-drop, there's a lot of units out there that are 5-drops that are causing problems and such. I mean, it doesn't have to always be a home run, but maybe they're going to print a leader, a bounty hunter leader, that can operate within cunning, that can play this. It's not villainy or heroism locked either, where maybe the deploy cost is like 7, and suddenly you're sniping all kinds of cool stuff, protecting it with a shield, and then, like Charmer said, it's harder to get rid of leaders than it is to get rid of anything else. It dodges things like Vanquish or other, type cards, but yeah, I think it's a cool card.
I like that I can capture spaceships with it.
Yep.
Oh,
I can
yeah.
reach up
That's
and
why I was
yoink the
highlighting
Millennium
the
Falcon
previous
down
one.
from orbit. Yeah.
Yeah, the previous one, you have to be in the same arena. But with Relentless Pursuit, you are relentless. They can't escape you even in space. And so you can absolutely just snag a starship and be like, that's mine. I dig it.
Yeah. Okay.
And all that cartel turncoat, right?
Just
All
I
right.
like it. He's just like yoink.
Yep.
Yeah. Go for it.
I'll take the next one. I think it's my turn anyway. It's the Pirate Battle Tank. Cost 6. It's command villainy. It's a 4/6 underworld vehicle tank. It has Sentinel, and it has Smuggle as well. So I think they were talking about this a little bit on the stream, and I'll kind of just reiterate what they were saying, where it's like, especially in limited, when you get up to where your hand size is small, you're kind of just seeing what you draw off the top to try to finish a game. Being able to just spend 7 resources to bust out a 4/6 Sentinel from your resources is potentially like backbreaking. So I think it's going to be a very strong card to resource early on and then play late in limited. In constructed, maybe if you had like a vehicle deck and you just needed a bunch of vehicles, you could put it in there. I guess Underworld tag, there's probably going to be things that interact with that too, but I'm less excited about it constructed. But limited, Charmer just has me thinking about limited all the time. I'm very hyped for this card there.
I love it for limited, but I want to live in a world where we have, big competitive events. And when you hit like top 8 or whatever, you have open deck lists.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these smuggle cards, somebody brings a list where they have like one of each of them so that your opponent is forced to play around them, right? As you were saying, in constructed probably doesn't make the cut, but I could see a world where, if you've got a little extra room or whatever, you just run it as a one of, right? Because all you need is to just have it in your resources, and then maybe it saves you. And if not, you resourced it anyway, no harm, no foul. That's the way I've been kind of looking at a lot of the smuggle cards is, would I want to run it as a one of? Like, that's my real litmus test. Some of them are good enough, possibly. I think, to 3 of, but I want to play around with a bunch of like one ofs just to see if I can catch some people off guard.
Dude, I think that the smuggle in general it warrants a bigger conversation that I want to get into in another episode. But the one comment I have on this card is, do you remember that episode of The Simpsons where Homer meets his long lost brother, who's like this very rich car designer, and he tries to he hires Homer to create the Everyman America car because Homer doesn't like any of the cars, and he wants to get a car that like somebody of Homer's, lifestyle would want to buy, and he ends up creating this absolute monstrosity. That's what this card reminds me of, because there's so much going on, not just in the artwork, but like there's 50 different colors flashed up on the screen. It looks like after a day of paintball, like it just got splattered with a million different colors on it. That's all I have to say. But I agree with Charmer. And this, to me, I would never put this in a constructed list, but smuggle in any type of limited format, I think, is going to have pay dividends, and just slamming this out on 7 out of your resource pile can really mess people up.
And now for the most exciting card revealed so far.
I tend to agree. Is it me?
I agree. Yeah.
All right, sweet. I
Go
get
for it.
the coolest one, frankly, I think, in my opinion so far. It's a ground unit, 3-drop. Heroism only. Say hello to Tech, the source of insight. It's a 2/5 fringe clone. And here's some interesting text. Each friendly resource gains smuggle. The gained smuggle cost is that card's cost plus 2. And its aspect icons, as well as this card itself, has a smuggle cost of 4 plus heroism. So, holy crap. All right.
Fantastic card.
Incredible card, incredible late game potential to just catch cards out of your resource pile when you need them. I think that this is a sideboard absolute Hall of Famer all-star potentially to shore up control matchups, to shore up long game matchups. I have been in so many situations where I'm like, all right, I've played 2 Avengers, they got smoked. Where's the other one? It's in my resource pile. Like, damn it. Or my super laser blasts or something like that, where though you draw them in your opening hand, you don't think you'll ever need them or see them ever again. Tech is there to save the day. Now, obviously, that's heroism, not villainy. But Tech to me feels like it's going to be a card that warrants a takedown, man. Like, this definitely warrants a takedown.
It's main board for me. I would put 3 main board any day of the week that I play any sort of heroism. I wouldn't put it in like Sabine. I think it's a little bit too slow for something like that. But I would put it in pretty much everything else. And the thing is, he's got Smuggle himself, and he breaks his own rules because he only costs 1 more than his printed cost to play with Smuggle. So yeah, I mean, I know what Charmer's going to say. It's like you resource him, right? You resource him early, and then you can bust him out late when your hand size starts to get a little bit low. Maybe, yeah, but
no, what I'm going to say,
I'd rather put more aggressive stuff in there.
And why I say he's main board and why I'm so high on this is his stat line.
Oh, stats are incredible.
Stat line, sure, yeah.
Is great. And I know 2 doesn't seem like a very aggressive attack power, and that's like the one drawback, but he's very durable for a 3-drop. And he's heroism, so he's going to trigger if you reveal him with your For a Cause I Believe In. But also, if you are short on stuff to resource early and you have to resource one of your For a Cause I Believes In, playing Tech and then doing that for lethal goes a long way. That's where I like look at this as potentially an aggro card. It's a control card for sure. If you're playing any sort of heroism control, you should be packing 3 Tech. But I will at least test it. I'm not saying that I'm 100% sold, but I will at least test it because, again, when I think of like, I really need that finisher and I know I resourced one and suddenly Tech can bail me out, I'm really high on that. And the 5 health is huge.
I don't think you're going to have the resources available to utilize Tech in aggro because the play you're talking about, playing Tech and then playing For a Cause and resources, costs 8 resources. I don't know the last time, I was able to do that in 1 turn with Sabine. You could do it over the course of turns, and maybe his health makes him live. But as far as mid-range and control goes, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'll be curious to see what your testing brings up because I don't think it'll work in aggro. But this might come as a shock to people that I have been wrong before. Not often, but it does happen.
I mean, I wouldn't do it in the same turn, but when I'm thinking about this play pattern, right, is like when I'm playing this early, my opponent likely looks at this and says, like, I either can ignore it or I have to get rid of it. And if they have to get rid of it, they probably have to invest more resources or better resources than they want to, right? It's going to eat a takedown, which means that's 1 less takedown for my Sabine later or some of my more premier units. You can't open fire it on its own. The 5 health is just very attractive to me because a lot of the issues that I run into is like the 1-for-1s. You might play this and they might, if they have already traded with units or whatever, they might hit it with a Power of the Dark Side. But again, like that's a premium removal a lot of the time. So I don't know. I will at least test it. 2-5 with a really relevant ability jumps out to me.
All right, here's the quick reason why I absolutely hate this card as a villainy player. I hate it because if I probe droid and Vader, it still trades into my probe droid and survives. Like,
that's true.
That's so annoying. Like on a 3-drop turn, and the way that I'd like to play Vader is I like to, especially into aggro, is I like to leave 1 open so that I can go like Stormtrooper, Vader, something down. On turn 2, or on the next turn, the 3 resource turn, it's like I want a probe droid and then Vader something potentially. Get things into kill range for other cards like Make an Opening or whatever. The other part about this is that this comes out on 3. I can't play my takedown yet. That's a 4-cost takedown. I can't do it. And then on that 4 turn when Sabine comes out, where that takedown was just wanting to snipe her, now I got to waste it on this asshole. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, this thing is just annoying as hell. So when I said sideboard hero, it was more wishful thinking and perhaps subliminal messaging, but
Walking it back, huh?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
I see how it is. Yeah.
I hate this card.
It's a psyop.
I hate the card. I'm gonna hate playing against it. But
Flake hates tech.
yes.
You know what card actually might see more play? You know, you're talking about that play pattern, Flake. The Snow Trooper that gets +2/+0 and Overwhelm when it's attacking wounded units. If tech becomes like a standard, Vader decks might transition from Probe Droid to that, because then your play pattern allows you to still play that. It's a 2-drop. It's a 2/3 instead of a 3/2, but you can play it, activate Vader, and then it does trade and survives with tech at that point.
I agree.
that
might be something to consider, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
Here's the real question. Here's the real question with tech, and he is only one aspect. And sure, it's heroism, but I think maybe you play him in villainy decks, because late game or even mid game, paying 5 for this ability is something your opponent really can't ignore. So for him to be able to turn on Smuggle for a lot of stuff in villainy decks, I think is legit. I think this is one of the cards that I've seen that I would be most likely to off aspect in a mid or control, slower deck kind of archetype. I would pay 5 for this. I would, as a villainy player. And again, the big thing is only one aspect, so you're only going to pay 2 more, no matter what your villainy leader is. So I think he's a legit off aspect potential card.
Or, I was saying before, I want to test a lot of 1-ofs with Smuggle. You could run him as a 1-of with the intent you're going to purposefully resource him. But then again, if you're talking control, like, yes, it's a lot, but you could pay 6 to then play your Power of the Dark Side or whatever, or like super late game. Who knows? I don't know.
Hey,
He's a villainy card secretly.
I definitely don't know.
He was a clone.
Last one. Who wants it?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Ha! I was so fast. I mean, wait. Is it your turn? No, you can take it. I did the tank.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So the last one that was revealed was Night Owl Skirmisher, and I believe this was not done on the stream, right? This was a creator reveal.
This was main deck.
Dan, yeah.
Really
okay, just wanted to make sure I was giving credit where credit was due. Main deck Dan. So Night Owl Skirmisher. This is a 3-cost ground unit. It is heroism and aggression. It is a 4/3 body with the Mandalorian and Trooper tags. And it doesn't have any special keywords or anything, but it does have Smuggle for 5 with the same aspects being heroism and aggression. I like this card as a common. It's, just vanilla stats, but it's the appropriate stats if you're playing aggression, heroism in limited. I also think that this is one of those cards that could find a home in constructed if you're playing like Bo-Katan, right? Because you're looking for those early Mandalorians that you can play attack with and get her triggers. I don't think it finds a home in constructed anywhere else other than Bo-Katan, but I do really like this for limited.
I concur. I think it's a limited. I don't say all-star. I said that word too much, and then I got burned. I think it's going to shine most in limited. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I would not say it's an all-star. I'd say it's a building block. Like, this is just like your meat and potatoes. Like, you're fine with getting this in limited. You don't prioritize it, but you're not upset if you have to play it.
If I'm building a Mandalorian deck, I'm probably putting this in there because it's a Mandalorian. And I think that Trooper tag is going to have crossover too, most likely, because there's a lot of stuff in red that can help Troopers out. So if a bunch of Mandalorians are Troopers as well, then yeah. So I think this is one of those like cards where it's like, okay, where the card pool isn't that huge yet, if I'm making a Mandalorian deck, I got to put my Mandalorians in. This is not a bad Mandalorian to put in your Mandalorian deck.
All right.
Mandalorian.
So, say it one more time. That's what the theme is for this new set. So that's basically the crux of the episode. We were going to talk about some other stuff, but they kind of just inundated us with some cool stuff, and we are all for it. There are a few do's and notes that I want to just graze over quickly. We can maybe discuss this on a future episode perhaps, but ultimately some of the theme or the notes from the stream regarding the what each of the aspects are going to allude to most in Shadows of the Galaxy. There's an article from Star Wars Unlimited. You can go check the website for that to get a deeper dive. But here are the basic Cole's notes. Vigilance will be focusing on Grit and Mandalorians. Also, they note that Grit was Grit was actually supposed to debut in Shadows of the Galaxy. And we said Mandalorians. We should have a Mandalorians count.
Mandalorians. That's it. Well, you're the editor. You can put it in there.
Oh God,
Have fun.
I gotta find a ding sound too.
Is it anything like our midichlorian count that tells us how force sensitive we are?
No, it's we haven't seen numbers this high since Master Yoda. Frankly, let's be real.
Wow.
Aggression will be looking to optimize bounty hunting. Command will focus on bounties and capture mechanic. And Cunning will focus on capture and the underworld. So that is what we have to look forward to.
Nice. I can't wait. There's so many fun cards that we've seen already. This is going to be a fun set.
Sweet, sweet. All right, friends. So that does it for the episode. Keep in mind that our mailbag is moved to Mondays. We're going to do a separate little thing on that. If you want to get your questions in for that mailbag episode, best way to do it is to become a patron and join our Patreon at patreon.com/icecaveradio, as the family is growing on the Discord as well. So join that. And I want to give huge thanks, big thanks to Invasion Comics and Cards, north of Toronto. You want to go check out invasioncnc.ca. And don't let the CA scare you. They do ship to North America at reasonable rates all across North America. But hey, you want to save some buckaroos, some credits, friends? Use the code ICECAVE5, and they'll get you 5% off your Star Wars Unlimited singles. And hey, 3% off sealed product. Now that is scarce, but when they do get more shipments of stuff, which they lobby hard to get, you can use that code and get 3% off your sealed product. Friends, that was it. Doa, Charmer, lots of cool stuff coming around the bend. I'm excited. Charmer.
Oh, sorry. I guess I should get ready. I was getting ready to order from Invasion. I was browsing their current singles catalog.
There's a lot there.
Apologies.
A lot of good stuff there.
Good hyperspace stuff there.
I know.
It's going to be bad for my wallet.
Every time that they restock and they're like, hey, we just got a bunch of new singles in, the first thing I do is I'm in there looking up the stuff I need. Yeah. Don't be shy. Get in touch with us. Follow the channel on YouTube here, on all your Spotify. Give us a 5-star review. You guys have been very good at that and it has really helped us. We are growing and it's because of your kindness and your support. So we appreciate that. At WatchFlake, at GGDOA, at ThatCharm3R. Come and join us on the Discord. Charmer, wisdom time. Give us the goods.
May the force be with you.